Namaskar. Today we will be discussing a little bit more on sales forecasting and budgeting. Today we shall be doing lecture 14, which is a part of the third module of this particular course called Sales and Distribution Management. In the previous lecture, we have given a brief introduction on sales forecasting, where we spoke about the meaning of sales forecasting, its usage, its relevance to different departments in an organization, and we also spoke about the types of sales forecasts. Today we will be moving beyond and we will be discussing both sales forecasting and budgeting. In this particular lecture 14, we shall be talking about sales forecasting approaches, so sales forecasting methods, and we should also be speaking about how to improve sales forecasting for an organization, how to come up with very accurate numbers or numerical digits with respect to sales forecasting. So we shall start with the approaches and then we will move on to the different methods, and then we will see how should organizations develop their sales forecast, which would be apt, which would be something very accurate, so that the planning with respect to different departments can then be undertaken. So let us first start with the sales forecasting approaches. Now, when we talk about sales forecasting, we yesterday discussed that it is a way, it basically delineates or it explains what the likelihood, what would the likely sales of that an organization would be able to earn, either in terms of product or in terms of a geographical territory or in terms of the time horizon, be it short range, medium range or long range. So it basically gives an idea about the kind of sales estimates which an organization could actually expect to earn for a particular product in a particular geographic territory or in a particular time period. We have also yesterday discussed the different concepts like the sales potential, the sales forecast, the company sales potential, the company sales forecast. We also talked about the sales quota and the budget. So we will now move forward and we will see what could be different approaches which could be adopted so as to obtain accurate or sales forecasts for a product or in a defined time period, in a defined geographical territory or a unit. So what are the different kinds of approaches that may be adopted? Now the first approach that we speak of is a top-down approach or a breakdown approach. The second is a bottom-up approach or a build-up approach, and the third is a combination of both. So when we talk about sales forecasting approaches, broadly speaking, there are two approaches: a top-down approach, which is also called a breakdown approach, and a bottom-up approach, which is also called a build-up approach. Of course, companies very often use both together, and this gives us the third approach, which is a combination of both the top-down or the breakdown approach, or the bottom-up or the build-up approach. Now let us discuss what the top-down or breakdown approach is and what the bottom-up or the build-up approach is. Now in a top-down approach, what happens is that the top management defines the various goals, the various sales objectives, the targets, and provides guidelines for preparation of budgets accordingly. So the task here is actually done by the top management, and the long range plans, the medium range plans are further percolated down right to the bottom or to the lower level sales team, or the working at the grassroots or the field selling team to actually accomplish these objectives. Of course, the top management defines these objectives, defines these goals, which are very broad, and the day-to-day strategic planning lies with the middle and the lower level sales management team. Also, while the top management defines the broad goal, these are then further broken down zonal or regional wise or branch wise, area wise, so forth. But the activity or the task of forecasting is undertaken by the top management, who defines the objectives and provides the guidelines for the preparation of the budget. The second for the preparation of the forecast and corresponding correspondingly the budget. So, it specifies the sales volume, it also specifies the selling expenses that could be allowable, and of course, all this is again done keeping in mind the net profitability or the desired profitability by a company. The second approach which we have is the bottom up or the build up approach, and here the authority to prepare the sales forecast and the budget lies with those who are to implement the sales plan and achieve the targets, and the different departments prepare their own budget. So, the authority to prepare the broad guidelines lies with those who are actually to implement these sales plans and achieve targets, and the different departments prepare their own budget. So, when we are talking about the budget here, it has to be made clear that we are speaking both in terms of sales volume to be generated as well as the selling expenses that would be incurred. Of course, a combination of both these approaches can also be used by the organization. So, in top down planning, the top management defines the objectives and provides the guidelines for preparation of the budget, which will actually talk about the sales volume and the selling expenses. Also, in the case of bottom up or build up approach, the authority to develop the budget lies with those who are to implement the plans and achieve the targets, and then the different departments prepare their own budgets again, which would specify both the sales volume as well as the selling expenses. A combination of the two can also be used. Now, how do companies come up with the top down approach? How do they actually build their sales forecasts based on the top down approach? First is assessing the external environment. To start with, as we just said, that the top down approach involves the top management, and the first thing that the top management actually looks at is the various opportunities and threats. So, it looks at avenues of growth, opportunities for growth. It also looks at threats which a particular business organization may face. So, keeping in mind keeping in mind that both the opportunities and threats are something which are very vital and need to be taken care of, the first thing that the top management does while using the top down approach or the breakdown approach is to assess the external environment. Thereafter, it prepares estimates for sales for a particular industry and also assesses the market potential. So, it gives a very macro picture, it uses a very macro picture to see industry sales growth as well as assesses the market potential. Thereafter, it makes an assessment of the company's sales potential by multiplying the industry sales, the estimated industry sales by the estimated market share of the company, and then it decides on the sales forecast on the basis of the calculated company sales potential. So, the top management starts with a very macro approach to first study the opportunities and the threats and the external environment, and it looks at the estimated sales for the industry. It studies the estimated sales for the industry, it prepares estimates for the industry sales as well as assesses the market potential. Thereafter, it takes a more micro approach which is more company specific, and so it makes an assessment for the company's sales potential, which it does by multiplying their estimated industry sales by the estimated by multiplying the estimated industry sales by the estimated market share of the company, and thereafter it decides on the sales forecast on the basis of the calculated company sales potential. So, what it involves is, one, forecasting the relevant macro environmental forces, which is the external environmental forces, looking at the opportunities and the threats, and then estimating the industry sales as well as the market potential. Once it is taken into estimated the market potential, it then has to calculate the company's sales potential, which, as I said, is calculated as a market potential multiplied by the company share, company market share, and thereafter it decides on the company's sales forecast. So, this is how the top management uses the top down approach or the breakdown approach and calculates the sales forecast and tries to do it in an apt manner, in a very accurate manner, so that further planning can be done. Now, there is another approach which is the bottom up approach or the build up approach. In the case of the bottom up approach or the build up approach, the salesperson first prepares an estimate, he prepares an estimate for the sales which they think they will be able to make to their prospective customers, they will be able to earn the kind of sales. So, they make an estimate of the sales which they feel that they will be able to earn, and then managers from various branches compile the sales forecast received from the various salespeople working in their area. The managers at the zone then compile the various sales forecasts which they have received from the different branches for under their command, and the sales head then combines the sales forecasted figures received from the various zones. So, what it involves is that the salespersons in the various territories, they first estimate their expected sales in their own territories. Thereafter, and they report to the branch manager. The branch sales managers of the different branches combine the sales forecast received from the various salespeople in the various territories, and they report the same to the zone or to the region. The regional managers or zonal managers then combine the sales forecast received from the various branches or from the various branch sales managers, and then the sales or the marketing head combines the different figures which he has received with respect to the sales forecast from the various regions. So it's something which is which moves from the below, where people at the branch, salespeople at the branch report what their estimates could be to the branch head. The branch heads collate the same from the various salespeople and report to the zonal manager or to the regional manager. The regional managers or the zonal managers collate these figures which they have received from the various branches, and they then report to the sales or the marketing head, and the sales or the marketing head then combines the various forecast which he has received from the different zones or from the different regions into a figure. So, that is how bottom up approach is used. Now, let us now come to the various methods for sales forecasting. Sales forecasting methods can be divided into two broad categories: quantitative methods and qualitative methods. The quantitative methods are different from the qualitative ones in the sense that they are more numeric, they are more number oriented. On the other hand, quantitative methods are also based on quantitative data. On the other hand, qualitative methods are subjective, they are based on expert opinion, they are based on secondary data and expert opinion, and so they are less number oriented, they are less numeric in nature, and they use a very different approach. Of course, sales forecast ultimately will be a numeric or a number, but the approach used to calculate the two is very different. Quantitative methods use data which is very number oriented and numeric, and qualitative methods use opinions, they use opinions from customers, opinions from experts, from channel partners, and based on past experiences, based on opinions, based on attitudes of customers, of experts, sales forecast is determined. So, let us discuss the qualitative and the quantitative methods. But what are these qualitative methods? Qualitative methods we have the executive opinion method, the Delphi method, the Salesforce composite method, and the survey of buyer's intention method, and of course test marketing. So, these are qualitative methods of sales forecasting. We also have the quantitative methods which are moving averages, exponential smoothing, decomposition, regression analysis, econometrics, and naive or the ratio method. So, let us discuss these approaches one by one. Now, first let us talk about the executive opinion method. Now, many organizations, they prepare their sales forecast by taking opinions from sales executives and by indulging in discussions with them. They take opinions from people working at the grassroots, working in different branches, working in different territories. They take feedback from them with respect to a particular company's products, competitors' products, customer needs, wants, preferences, changing trends or changing needs, wants and preferences. So, they take this feedback from them. They also take based on this feedback, they ultimately arrive at a sales forecast which would tell them the kind of sales volume and the kind of selling expenses that would be incurred in a particular territory in a particular time period by salespeople working in those areas. So this is what we refer to as the executive opinion method. Now, many times the opinion here is not only taken by the salespeople, it could also be taken by sales managers or by very senior managers who were once upon a time based in a particular branch or a particular region or particular zone, and these senior people are asked for their opinion about with respect to customer priorities there, the needs, wants, preferences there in those geographical territories or those branches or those zones, and based on the experiences, based on their experiences, these senior managers, they give their opinion, and this opinion is then collated and numbers are arrived at with respect to what a sales forecast could be in a particular region, in a particular time period for a particular product. So, the executive opinion method here would involve both the sales people as well as the sales executives at the middle level or even at the senior level. The second method, again a qualitative method for sales forecasting, is the Delphi method. Now, in the Delphi method, there is a coordinator who takes individual forecasts, who asks for individual forecasts and compiles these individual forecasts which he receives from the different experts, and then he shares it with them again for getting forecast estimates. Process keeps getting repeated till a consensus is reached. So, in the case of Delphi, the coordinator or maybe the person who is being designated with the task of calculating sales forecast contacts experts, contacts people who have knowledge, who have skills, who have experience in selling a particular kind of product in particular territories. So, these experts are chosen by the coordinator, and the experts are asked for their valuable opinion with respect to sales of a particular product in a particular territory, and once these estimates are received from various experts, these are collated by the coordinator, and he may again send them back to the experts for further opinion or for further suggestions, and the process is repeated till a consensus with respect to numbers is reached by the different participants or the different experts who have been a part of the sales forecasting method, who have been a part of the Delphi method. So, the process is very iterative in nature. For example, there may be a expert who gives a figure which is very positive or very optimistic. Another expert may give a figure which is not so optimistic or not so positive, and another may give something which is a little more pessimist or negative. Another may give an opinion which is somewhere middle in the range. So, these different estimates are shared with the others, shared with each other again, and as much as possible a consensus is tried to be reached between the experts and one particular figure or a range of within which sales forecast could be sales forecast could a particular range is then established where a forecast could lie in. So, this is what we talk of as the Delphi method. Now, executive opinion method as well as Delphi method, they are both very subjective in nature. Of course, in the case of executive opinion method, it is easy to use. Results may be obtained quickly because these are people within the company, and they would be more willing to give quick feedback or give quick inputs. However, in the case of Delphi, the process is a little time consuming. It may take a couple of months or a couple of weeks or maybe a few months to arrive at a particular consensus, and so it's time consuming and a slow process. However, it is estimates arrived in because of the Delphi and because of executive opinion are something which are wise. There is a lot of collective wisdom which goes into it, and so these are these are popularly used qualitative methods. The third is a Salesforce composite method. Now, just as we said in the previous slide where we talked about the executive opinion. So here, while the executive opinion is more to do with the middle and the senior, the sales forecast is more to do with the salespeople at the field. Salespeople are asked to give their own estimates, which are later compiled for a branch or for a zone and so forth, and broadcasts and forecasts are then calculated for broader levels. The positive part, or the positive point about this method is that it involves salespeople who are in direct touch with the customers, who are at the grassroots, who are who have huge amount of experience in dealing with the day-to-day scenario and the day-to-day market conditions, and so they are in tune with what is happening in the external environment. They know the customer, they know the changing needs, wants and preferences, they know the competitive offering. This is a very it's a very practical and a very realistic a picture that they can provide. However, to arrive at generalizations, a large data set is required, large amount of people, large number of salespeople may be involved in an exercise, and this may take time, as data would be required from a huge set of people. Another problem which this kind of method is that sales force may often give figures which are not very realistic in terms of, sometimes they may try to show that if the real picture lies with a number x, they would give a number x minus 10 or x minus 100, so forth, so that the targets which are expected from them are not very high. Of course, that is something which has to be taken with a pinch of salt, because the fact is that the kind of inputs that the sales force provides is something which is very true, which is very realistic. But yes, of course, this realism or this realistic data may often be brought down by them, fearing the fact that if they give the true picture or the true numbers, they may be asked to achieve very high targets, which may not always be possible. They may also fear that some of them may lose their jobs, because it may be thought that there is the number of people who are already employed by the organization are sufficient enough to earn sales and I mean, even if the sales forecast is low, they would not give the true picture, because they would fear loss of job. So it could be both ways. They could either shy away from giving the true number because they fear higher targets, or they may shy away from giving you few numbers because they may fear loss of jobs. So in both these cases, the sales force may bring to light or report findings which are not true or not realistic, but somewhere figures which are low. Another qualitative method which is used by organizations is survey of buyers' intention, where the buyers are directly asked if they would be willing to buy certain products. So a survey is conducted and buyers are interviewed. They are asked whether they would buy a product or they would not buy a product, whether they intend buying it in the future, if at all, when, or if they may also get to know whether buyers would actually be buying or would not be buying, or if they would be buying, how sooner or later is it going to be. So such estimates are give inputs into calculating the forecast for the company. Estimates are reliable here, as these are based on the opinion of the prospective buyers, but again it is a very time consuming exercise, and the rate of non-response may be very high, especially if this is not an interview based, but if it is a questionnaire based. A lot of people may not even respond to the questionnaire or to the or may not even want to be a part of the survey. Another qualitative method which can be used is the test marketing. Now, test marketing here, which is generally done for during new product launch, could be full blown, or it could be controlled, or it could be simulated. Now, first let us talk about what full blown test marketing is. In the case of full blown test marketing, it is very similar to launching of a new product nationwide, but this is done in very few cities, in very select cities. 5 or 6 cities in a particular country are chosen, and the product is launched as if it is a nationwide launch, and then customer response is studied, and based on this forecasts are determined. Another method could be the controlled test marketing. In controlled test marketing, only selected locations are chosen, and within the selected locations only select stores are chosen as subjects of study. So, people who visit these stores are a part of the sample, and based on the people who visit these few stores in these selected locations, sales forecasts are determined. The third is a simulated test marketing approach. In the case of a stimulated test marketing approach, 20 or 30 prospective buyers are called, product is shown, and demonstrated, and the customers are queries are handled, customer doubts are cleared, and then of course it is again customers are asked whether they would want to buy the product or not buy the product, what their reaction is studied. Now this kind of a full blown or a controlled or a stimulated test marketing approach is generally used in B2C markets or in business to consumer markets. There could be another kind of test marketing which is in the form of the alpha and the beta testing, which we see more in the case of B2B markets, where alpha testing is done while within the organization itself, and the beta testing is done at the client's end. Again, based on the alpha and the beta testing, companies arrive at sales forecast figures. The method, test marketing as a method, helps in getting close to very actual estimates, which can, but the problem is that this could of course be affected by the competitive strategies. For example, in the case of for example, in test marketing, the product is kind of launched, and the 4 Ps are clearly known not only to the customers but also to the competitors, who may imitate or copy the mix, and with a different marketing strategy they may be able to gain much more than what the first mover could do. So this is a problem with and so the sales forecast that are determined through test marketing may prove to be faulty. So, so that is why test marketing as a qualitative method is often not used alone. It is used with other qualitative and quantitative methods. Now let us come to the quantitative methods of sales forecasting, where the first method is the moving average method, where the sales of the company over a past few years or a specified time period are averaged to arrive at sales estimates. So it includes dropping sales in the oldest period, but it involves replacing it with the latest or the newest period. So the sales forecast for the next year would be determined by actual sales forecast for the past 3 or 6 years divided by the number of years, which could be either 3 or 6 years, and in this way based on the actual sales of the last 3 years or 6 years, based on data which is available with the company, sales forecast for a company could be determined. Then we have the exponential smoothing method, which is again a quantitative method. It is similar to the moving average method. Weights are assigned to the different data points, to the past data points, and this is basically a weighted moving average of all the past data. So sales forecast for the next period would be equal to L multiplied by actual sales of this year, plus 1 minus L multiplied by this year's sales forecast, where L will be taken as a smoothing constant lying between 0 and 1. So again, based on data which is available with the company, and the exponential smoothing method could be used to determine sales forecast. Then we have the decomposition method, where companies past sales records are broken down and trends, patterns and cyclical events are analyzed to predict the sales. This is a very accurate and a low cost method, but it requires good analytical and inferential skills to make good forecasts. And then you have the ratio method, where the sales forecasts are made by the following formula, where sales forecast for the next year is equal to actual sales of this year multiplied by actual sales of this year divided by actual sales of the previous year. Again, it is easy to use, low cost, but again, if fluctuations exist in past sales, forecasts could go wrong. Then we have regression analysis, which can also be used as a quantitative method, where it is used after identification of causal relationships between variables. Software packages like the SPSS, AMOS, etc. can be used to conduct the regression analysis. Of course, this method involves understanding both linear as well as non-linear relationships, and it's a very accurate method, but it is technically complex and not very suitable for huge data sets. Then we have the econometric planning modeling, which involves again preparation of many regression equations to arrive at sales forecast. It uses multiple independent variables with the assumptions that there is a linear equation between the dependent and the independent variable. Of course, the dependent variable being the sales figures. Highly accurate method, but again it involves a lot of expertise to actually handle this kind of approach. Then we have the naive method or the ratio method, where the sales in a particular period t is equal to sales t plus 1. So, sales forecast for the next year is equal to sales forecast of this year multiplied by actual sales of this year divided by actual sales of last year, which we just now mentioned in the previous slide. Now, how do we actually improve sales forecasting? Sales forecasting can be improved, one, by using a number of methods. It's very important that both qualitative and quantitative methods are used. Even within qualitative methods, it would be wise to use a couple of approaches, or within quantitative methods it would be wise to use quantitative approaches together. So, such findings could be corroborated then and would be more accurate. Also, one should keep the time factor under consideration, because different forecasting approaches require different amount of time, and carrying out a timely discussion with salespeople also helps in making very sound forecasting. So, even if companies use a qualitative or a quantitative approach, they must also discuss with the salespeople, with the field selling team about the various forecast figures that have been obtained from by using the qualitative or the quantitative approach. So, the salespeople's feedback can also be vital help in finalizing on the sales forecast figures. Also, establishing a range of sales forecasts like short term, medium term or long term can be fruitful for making better decisions, not only in the sales and marketing team, but across all different departments in the organization. As we have discussed yesterday, that the sales forecast figures prove to be immensely helpful to different departments in the organization. So, with this we come to an end of this session. The references are still Kandif, Kovani, Puri, Sales and Distribution Management 2017, Pearson, India, Havaldar and Kawale, Sales and Distribution Management Text and Cases 2017, McGraw-Hill, and Havaldar and Kawale 2007 and 8, Sales and Distribution Management, Tata McGraw-Hill. So, this brings us to an end of the 4th lecture on the 3rd module of the course. I hope you found this particular lecture fruitful. Thank you.